All right. Good evening. My name is Andrew Bremberg, and I am the president of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. It is my honor to welcome you and those viewing to the Victims of Communism Museum for this evening's event. Thank you all for joining us here and virtually to discuss these critically important issues of what's taking place in Cuba today. I would like to recognize Kelly de la Mora, a former political prisoner and UNPACO activist, and Javier Larrado, president of Prisoners Defenders, who we are also honored to have here with us this evening. Well, welcome to you that are visiting the museum here for the first time. Here at VOC, we are dedicated to the remembrance of more than 100 million killed by communist regimes and to advocating for freedom for the more than 1.5 billion people who are still suffering at the hands of communist regimes today, including independent artists, human rights activists, and Cuban political prisoners that we are honoring in a special way today. Just 2 years ago, July 2021, thousands of Cubans took to the streets across the island to protest the repression and corruption that they have suffered for more than 6 decades. They demanded freedom and chanted "Down with communism," singing "Patria y vida," fatherland and life, a powerful message against the communist rule. The Cuban communist regime responded to the largest civil protests seen in decades with further repression and violence. More than 1,000 political prisoners have been documented by our partners at Prisoners Defenders and other human rights organizations. But what has happened since? What has been their fate? We are so proud to launch a new and innovative project that will allow us to map, analyze, and search for information about political prisoners in Cuba in real time. And we are here to present a groundbreaking report examining torture against political prisoners in Cuba. This new report, released this month, analyzes 181 victims tortured by the regime in the last 12 months, utilizing both quantitative and qualitative methods. It exposes the Cuban regime's brutal system of torture targeting democracy activists and political prisoners. Among them is VOC's Truman Reagan Medal of Freedom laureate, Jose Daniel Ferrer, and artists such as the Latin Grammy winner, Michael Castillo, aka Osorbo, and Luis Manuel Otero Alcantara, who were also recognized with VOC's Dissident Human Rights Award. All are being tortured in Cuba's prisons. This report also details instances of torture against Afro-Cubans, women, a transgender prisoner, and even minors. I urge the United States and all international human rights organizations and communities to show their solidarity towards these victims of communism who are suffering today. Although the Soviet Union collapsed more than 30 years ago, over 1/5 of the world is still trapped and enslaved by communism in countries like China, Cuba, Laos, North Korea, and Vietnam. And unfortunately, we see that this has spread to countries like Venezuela and Nicaragua. For the free world, 1989 is remembered as the year of miracles, with the collapse of Europe's communist dictatorships. But its collapse didn't just happen. It came after decades of resistance from the citizens of those countries. Many of those heroes that led to the collapse of communism, from the dissident movements, the Hungarian Revolution, the Prague Spring, the Solidarity movement in Poland, and to those who tore down the Berlin Wall in Germany, are recognized here in our museum, which just opened last year. But so too are those who are still suffering under communism, not just in China and Vietnam and other places, but also those, importantly, who are brave Cubans who have stood for freedom and for human rights, and to this day fight for that cause in their own country. In closing, we are blessed to live here in a nation that values liberty and has prospered and protected the rights of its citizens to pursue our God-given potential to the fullest. But there is an urgent need right now to provide direct support to Cuban political prisoners, just 90 miles from our shores. We call on the US government and others in the international community to live up to the values we so proudly profess to believe in, and to pressure this communist regime to release them immediately. If we do, and if we continue to stand with those who are suffering in Cuba, we will one day say in a new and different way, Viva Cuba Libre. Thank you. Good night.
Well, many thanks to Ambassador Bremberg, President of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, to whom we are grateful for supporting this study. I would also like to make a special mention to the Czech Transition Promotion Program for supporting us also financially in our work. I'm very pleased to share this event with Keiliyi de la Mora Valle, activist of UNPACU, the organization led by José Daniel Ferrer, precisely the most tortured person in Cuba right now, and who is part of this study that we present to you today. Those of us who have been working for years in the field of human rights in Cuba, including ordinary Cubans, know well that political prisoners have always been tortured. Many of them fall under the definition of mistreatment and inhuman treatment and cause irreversible damage to the human being, but they are not as eschatological as those perpetrated by Nicaragua and Venezuela today, two regimes that still have a lot of methodology to learn from the malevolent Cuban system. We have reviewed one by one the testimonies of more than 250 declarants who have served to put together the 181 cases. 181 cases of torture that we present to you today. The situations we have described provoke a strong pain in the soul, but for 64 years that this has been happening, we do not see in the international community, with a special mention to Canada and Europe, an adequate reaction to this situation. This study demonstrates, without the slightest possibility of doubt, with 168 cases taken at random and another 14 studied ex professo, that in Cuba, each and every person who is arrested for expressing an opinion contrary to the prevailing system is cruelly tortured. And this is the key today. We are not talking about whether or not they are in prison. We are not talking about an unfair and arbitrary detention and trial. We are talking about the fact that when they are already arbitrarily imprisoned, unable to speak, unable to leave a cell, handcuffed, when they have been stripped of everything they have and everything they are, when they are in the most absolute defenselessness, there, at that moment, in addition, they torture them. And they torture them without mercy, without rest, and with the only limit of avoiding too much evidence of that torture, of avoiding the death of the torturer as possible, because it happened, and it has happened from time to time and continues to happen. They do not kill the tortured, but most of the times, but they do make many of them want to stop living. If you only knew how many mothers fear for the suicide of their young boys and girls because they have already told them, "Mommy, I don't want to go on living anymore." And several of them have already attempted suicide in prison. Young people of 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 21 years old, innocent, tortured, wishing to leave this world. Do you know how it feels like to talk to a mother who is going through this? The pain of the soul pierces me. Democracies can no longer live in lies, in denial of help, in silence. Of the 100 81 cases of torture presented in the study, 168 cases were analyzed without prior selection, randomly among the families of prisoners. It resulted that all the prisoners were being tortured. So it is obvious the conclusion, all prisoners of conscience in Cuba are being tortured. But in addition, 80% of these cases are suffering more than 5 types of torture. And children, minors, and young people are some of the most tortured groups. Gabriela, let me see if I have the case here. I have here the patterns. Gabriela is a demonstrator of 11J, who was tortured just for demonstrating. When she was taken to prison, the guards, she's 17 years old, Gabriela. When she was taken to prison, the guards, verbatim from a witness, put their finger in her vagina while squatting. Marcos Antonio Alfonso Breto, 19 years old, has been martyred with 11 types of torture. I extract some of the sentences from the statements that have given rise to the inclusion of his case. He had cigarette burns on his arms. He was beaten by instructors. Aníbal Yaciel Palau Jacinto, 25, was given electric shocks that made him urinate. While handcuffed, he was hit in the face with a police baton. Look at the case of Maria Cristina and Angelica Garrido, mothers of 2 beautiful children, each between 11 and 15 years old. For demonstrating on 11J, Angelica and Maria Cristina were brutally arrested and beaten to such an extent that Angelica fainted 3 times from the violence of the blows. Textual verbatim words of the witness. From there, they were taken to the police station where, upon arrival, Maria Cristina was again beaten by a uniformed policeman. Later, Maria Cristina was transferred to a place called AIDS prison, Prisión del SIDA. There, Maria Cristina was beaten twice more by a guard. According to the witness, they beat her without limit to such an extent that Maria Cristina urinated on herself twice. After the beatings were over, they were literally thrown into a torture cell where they could not even sit down. And so it has continued to happen until today, when they are both in prison. Take a look at this list. Jonathan Torres Farrat, detained with 17 years of age, 15 types of torture. Gabriela Sequeira Hernandez, 17 years old, 14 types of torture. Brandon David Becerra Curbelo. Let me see if I have the list here so you can see it. Let me see it, because I think I have the list here, okay? Brandon David Becerra Curbelo, 70 years old, 8 types of torture. Cristian Enrique Salgado Vivar, 17 years old, 8 types of torture. Adán Cuibel Castillo Echevarría, 18 years old, 3 types of torture. Marcos Antonio Alfonso Breto, 19 years old, 11 types of torture. Kevin Damian Frometa Castro, 19 years old, 9 types of torture. The list has 181 names, but it is only a sample of 1,277 political prisoners from the last 12 months when the list of torture was terminated. The victim with the highest intensity of torture is Jose Daniel Ferrer Garcia, 52 years old, who is receiving constant sonic attacks since he entered Mar Verde prison in 2021, has a live bulb on permanently 24 hours a day in a cell that has only plain white walls. Jose Daniel has been poisoned with his water and food. He has had a complete and total isolation since the beginning of his captivity, almost 2 years ago, permanently in underwear in a tortured technologically prepared punishment cell. His physical and psychomotor degradation is brutal. However, his words of encouragement, of strength, in the few calls he has been able to have in these 2 years, recall high moral concepts of martyrs with very evident parallels to such emblematic figures as Gandhi or even Jesus Christ. The most common tortures among the minors in the study turn out to be, and let me see if we have that in the slides. These are the tortures of the minors. These are the percentages of them having this one of the 15 types of torture. Humiliation, degradation, and verbal abuse, 100% of them. Deprivation of communication with family, defense, and relatives, 100% of them. Intentional sleep deprivation, 100% of them. Fluid and food deprivation, 100% of them suffered it. Medical care deprivation, 100% suffered that. Forced labor not related to the condemnation, 100% suffer that. Solitary punishment confinements, 75%. Use of temperature as a torture mechanism, 75%. Physical aggressions, 75%. Threats to them, their integrity, threats to them, their integrity and their safety, and the safety of their loved ones, 75% of them. Those are the common tortures among the minors studied, which is amazing because they are minors. The most common tortures about on young people, I think it's here. Yeah, young people are humiliation, degradation, and verbal abuse suffered by 81% of them, 82% of them. Deprivation of communication with family, defense, and relatives, 73% of them. Physical aggressions, 73% of them suffer it. Solitary punishment, confinement, 73% of them suffered it. And the most common tortures among women, and you can see a slight changes because on women, they go for their social and family more than in other aspects because they study the pain they make on victims. And on women, you can see that deprivation of communication with family, defense, and relatives is suffered by 94% of them. Humiliation, degradation, and verbal abuse, 88% of them suffer it. Threats to them, their integrity, their safety, and that of their loved ones, which is very important. In this case, 82% of them suffered. Medical care deprivation, 70% of them. Use of temperature as a torture, 70%. It is one degree of evil for a system to imprison people for their thoughts. It is quite another to know that all political prisoners, more than 1,000, are tortured mercilessly, viciously, causing irreversible damage to them, their children, and their families. There is no other option among democratic countries but to oppose head-on to the crimes of less humanity, crimes against humanity that are committed every day, every week, every year in Cuba. There cannot be a peaceful world as long as there are human beings subject to these barbarities. The first duty of free human beings is to liberate all others. We cannot get along with saying that a woman abuser is not so much a woman abuser. And I think of Tina Turner, for example. But no, the man has a very, very bad character. Cuba is abusing, violating, destroying his own citizens in front of all of us. It's a fact. What are we going to do about it? On top of that, Cuba is now strongly promoting alliances with the axis of the Russian Federation. It seemed obvious, and several international human rights organizations warned the authorities of the European Union. Castro's Cuba and Russia are and will be allies. in a way the European Union can never be with the dictatorial government of the island. To confirm this, Cuba has very clearly chosen to support the war in Ukraine and has praised the annexations of the Donbass. A scatological fact made public in Moscow by the president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, at the end of 2022. It is precisely this block situation that Cuba always seeks in order to be able to maintain a regime of parasitic identity and a trajectory that keeps sinking, bringing its people down with it. In order to put a finishing touch on this new alliance with Russia, Cuba is already sending soldiers to Ukraine. Watch this. On the one hand, it acknowledges having signed an agreement to send troops to Belarus to receive military training. After decades, now it sends people to receive military training to Belarus. But perhaps the Cuban army is one of the few in the world that does not need to receive training for Alexander Lukashenko's troops, unless the purpose of the training is to enter into combat using modern weaponry supplied by Russia that Cuba does not already have. Okay, that is one piece of the puzzle, which is quite logical in the current situation, since, on the other hand, the Russian media are echoing that Cuban military are sent to fight in Ukraine. One only has to have the Cuban law at hand to know that no Cuban military can leave the island and enter the conflict without having been sent by the government with an official passport. That is, they are soldiers rented to Russia by the Cuban government. Otherwise, they cannot leave even the island by law. We need a strong reaction to this barbarism. The Cuban regime deserves immediate international rejection and isolation. It tortures its citizens mercilessly, but in addition, it contributes and has contributed for decades to the commission of crimes against humanity all over the planet. The monster must be stopped now. Atrevida, thank you very much. And I think I'm gonna pass the word to Kelly before presenting the side on political prisoners, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, for this segment, well, I'm Yuri Perez, Director for Latin America at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. So for this segment, Kelly is going to speak in Spanish and I'm going to provide translation. Ahora, dale, les decía que vas a hablar de tu experiencia en Cuba en español y que yo voy traduciendo lo que nos compartes.
Ok, bueno. Mi nombre es Kaylee de la Mora Valle, es prisionera política, actualmente exiliada fuera en Estados Unidos, en contra de mi voluntad. Mi experiencia en Cuba no fue la mejor. Me carcelaron con 20 años.
Sí, tienes que ir pausando para... Sí, well, so she's sharing about her experience in Cuba, that she didn't have the best experience and that she's here in the United States as a political refugee against her will, and she was sentenced to 20 años. So she got a 20-year sentence and no.
El último encarcelamiento que sufrí por parte del régimen fue en probación de pandemia, una medida que me aplicaron ellos, una sanción injusta por el motivo de que yo estaba en contra del régimen, yo denunciaba, me unía a la UNPACU, no estaba de acuerdo con el régimen y decidí no ser carnera. Una muchacha que despertó, no quiso ser carnera, empezó a manifestarse en contra del régimen.
So the last time that the regime went after her was with fake allegations that she was spreading COVID, and actually they went after her because her activism with UNPACU, advocating for human rights.
Entonces, les voy a contar mi última experiencia en la prisión un poquito, que fue la más fatal, la que más sufrí tortura, tanto psicológica, física y de todo, que me llevó hasta intentar quitarme la vida.
So she's going to share her last experience in prison while she was in Cuba. This last experience was really traumatic. She was tortured both physically and psychologically, and she even tried to commit suicide.
Me sancionaron a 1 año y medio de privación de libertad por el delito inventado, fabricado por el régimen de propagación de pandemia que nunca propagué y ya llevaba puesto una mascarilla. Me sancionaron 1 año y medio por eso. Nunca fue por eso, fue por no estar con el régimen.
She was sentenced to 1.5 years for spreading COVID, although she was wearing a mask, and it was an excuse to punish her activism.
Al entrar a prisión, me declaré en huelga de hambre porque no estaba de acuerdo con la sanción, no estaba de acuerdo, yo no hice nada, solamente pensé diferente y decidí hacer una huelga de hambre hasta los límites que fuera necesario al entrar en la prisión.
Once she was incarcerated, she decided to go into a hunger strike to protest her unjust incarceration.
Fue en el 2020.
This happened in 2020.
Cuando entré en la huelga de hambre, me llevaron directamente a una celda aislada de todo el penal, por estar en huelga de hambre. Ahí me forzaron a ponerme un uniforme.
So while she was doing the hunger strike, she was sent to an isolated cell inside the prison, and there she was forced to wear a uniform.
La celda era un espacio reducido de más o menos, no sé cómo explicarlo.
4 metros.
Sí, pequeña. Una celda pequeña de 4 metros.
This isolation cell was really tiny, about 4 square meters.
Más o menos este ancho, sí. Y este largo aquí, era el pedacito.
Sí, ya había dicho.
En un espacio pequeño, ahí empezaron las torturas de las guardias del mismo centro penitenciario. Me llevaban la comida. Ahí empezaron con las torturas psicológicas, me llevaban la comida y me la ponían así para olerla. Yo no estaba comiendo, yo no tomé agua durante 3 días.
During the hunger strike, she was not, she was rejecting the food and not drinking water. So the prison guards would present the food to her to make her smell food to break her will.
Y ahí estaban, me torturaban, me ponían la comida, me la hacían, se la ponían ellos mismos a comer. Ahí empezaron a torturarme psicológicamente con eso, porque yo no comía, entonces me ponían la comida. Mandaban a la reclusa a que me gritaran cosas, me agredieran, me gritaran.
So the prison guards, they would like eat in front of her during the hunger strike. They will also order other like common prisoners to insult her and harass her as a political prisoner there.
Ya llevando 7 días en la huelga, me hacen una glicemia porque ni me asistían. Me hacen una glicemia y cuando vieron como yo tenía la azúcar, la tenía en 3.2, me trasladan corriendo para el hospital.
So after 7 days of hunger strike, the prison authorities did test her blood, and upon there finding that her levels of sugar and other measurements were very concerning, she was sent to a hospital.
Todo esto sin informarle a mi familia, sin informarle a nadie de fuera. Todo era dentro del ámbito de la seguridad del Estado y la gente del órgano de prisiones y la gente del penal. Las reclusas tenían prohibido dar esa información para afuera.
So while all this is happening, the regime official and the secret police, they wouldn't allow her family to know about her status.
Ya me trasladaron al hospital, le informaron a mi papá para que emocionalmente influyera sobre mí y yo depusiera la huelga de hambre.
So then the secret police try another way, which is talking to her father so that her father would ask her to stop the hunger strike.
Yo al ver a mi papá en la situación que estuvo, le dije a mi papá que sí, que iba a comer. Me regresan para el penal y en el penal sigo en huelga de hambre, que es cuando vienen las golpizas.
So once they took her father to see her and tried to convince her to leave the hunger strike, she said, yes, I will. But so she's sent back to the prison and she still continue the hunger strike. Now they start beating her to punish her.
Ya continué en la huelga de hambre, la golpiza, vienen las guardias, me forzaron a ponerme el uniforme, dándome golpes, y es cuando yo intento quitarme la vida, porque no aguanté.
So at this point, she's still on hunger strike. The prison guards and just to clarify, she's referring there as female prison guards. They force her to wear the prisoner uniform and beating her. So at that point, she was her will. She couldn't take it anymore, so she attempted to commit suicide.
Ahí intenté quitarme la vida, me trasladaron, llamaron a la guardia, me trasladaron para un hospital psiquiátrico, donde me tuvieron en un aislado también, en el hospital, en una sala de psiquiatría del hospital de Cienfuegos. Me tuvieron ahí aislada, poniéndome sedación que no me dijeron nunca cuál era. Me inyectaban, me amarraban.
So once she tried to commit suicide, she's sent to a psychiatric hospital. At the psychiatric hospital, she was forced to take medication that nobody informed her what type of medications they were doing, injecting her substances, and she was tied while in the psychiatric hospital.
Y las guardias que estuvieron ahí conmigo en todo ese tiempo ahí que estuve hospitalizada, no eran del penal, eran del órgano de cárceles y prisiones, guardias de la prisión de hombres, porque las guardias de dentro del penal no las permitían.
And this is another group of prison guards, not the same that were with her in the prison, like in the psychiatric facility, they have a different group of guards.
Estando en el hospital, le avisaron por una persona que me vio a mi familia, que yo estaba ingresada en el hospital, a mi familia enterarse, fueron corriendo para allá, no dejaron a mi familia pasar, no le dieron explicación de mí, le dijeron que yo había intentado contra mi vida y ya, y yo estaba huelga de hambre también.
So while she's at the hospital, someone leaked to her family that she's suffering all this, like in psychiatric facility, she's still in hunger strike. So the family goes to the hospital, tried to see her, and they didn't allow contact with the family.
Ya en 11 días yo bajé como 7 kilos. 7 kilos. Yo entré pesando 40 kilos y bajé a 30 y tantos kilos.
So in about 11 days, she lost a lot of weight. 15 pounds.
A ver, eso fue estando en psiquiatría. Me amarraron, me sedaron, los mismos asistentes. Porque cuando yo empezaba a manifestarme dentro, porque con razón yo quería ver a mi familia, quería saber si mi familia sabía de mí, yo no tenía esa información. Y yo, al ver las guardias que como lo que hacían, escuchar por personas que me llamaban por una ventana detrás de la sala, los mismos reclusos que trabajaban ahí, vecinos que se enteraron que yo estaba ahí. Yo sentía la voz de mi mamá se fue corriendo.
So she's at the psychiatric facility, so still tied, they are forcing medication, injecting her sedative, and her family and friends, sympathizers are outside of the hospital, like calling out her name so she could hear.
Fue corriendo hasta a esa ventana y yo ve cómo se llevaron a mi mamá, me hizo a mí volver a intentar contra mi vida dentro de la sala de psiquiatría, que me trepé en un falso techo.
So she once the regime authorities arrested her mother outside of the facility. She tried to commit suicide again by climbing into like a fake ceiling. And
Que quise volver a hacerlo. Cosa que yo no entendía, la sedación que me ponían era para sedarme y al contrario, yo estaba en huelga de hambre, no podían sedarme, no podían ponerme medicación y así todo me estuvieron poniendo un tiempo más que ya yo no podía tener medicación. Y lo que hacía ese medicamento era ponerme más.
So the medications that they were putting on her, that again, she doesn't know what it was, instead of calm her down, like she felt like it drove her crazy, like being more active.
El mismo médico que era el psiquiatra que tenía que conversar, no conversaba conmigo, cosas de la medicina, no, al contrario, cada vez que me daba una entrevista era de hablarme de quererme hacer cambiar mi mente a la mente, a lo que ellos querían.
So the physician, the psychiatrist, that instead of discussing with her the medications, the treatment, like how to heal her, the psychiatrist, instead of that, would pressure her to do whatever the regime wanted her to do.
Es decir, en Cuba, los médicos son totalmente dependen del sistema. Lo que les diga el régimen es lo que hacen los médicos. Los médicos en Cuba, a nosotros, los que pensamos diferentes, no nos dan el tratamiento que tienen que darnos, nos dan el tratamiento que le manda la seguridad del Estado que den.
So these physician, medical doctors, instead of doing what is right for the patients, like in the case of dissidents, they instead of doing that, they will do whatever the secret police ordered them to do.
Al volver a la prisión, porque se filtró una foto mía que me tiran en psiquiatría, se hizo viral en las redes, al volver a la prisión fue una tortura completa. Las presas me ofendían, me agredían, me amenazaron con cortarme la cara.
So there was a leak photo of her while she's suffering all this, and as a reprisal because the photo became viral in social media, so the other common prisoners would insult her, like physically assault her while she's in prison.
Gracias al apoyo que tuve de las personas que a los 9 meses de estar encerrada, me sacan sin decirme nada. Me decían que yo iba a un turno médico que me sacaron del penal sin yo ver que habían recogido mis pertenencias y me llevaron con la seguridad del Estado hasta una casa que hay allá en la provincia.
So after 9 months suffering all this in prison, and thanks to the international pressure, the people that were raising awareness about her situation, she, without any notice, they just took her out of the prison and took her to a house outside, away from the prison.
Después de salir yo no tuve vida tampoco, seguía la represión, las detenciones cada vez que salía, la vigilancia, la agresión. Mira, yo salía a una fiesta y me agredieron un informante.
So once she's released, once she was released, the harassment and the violence and the surveillance and like secret police agents will be following her. And at one point, somebody working with the secret police attacked her and cut her face.
Me dio una pedra, me desfiguró el rostro, yo no lo conocía. Él estuvo en el grupo, pero no sabía quién era. Se hizo la denuncia, pero no está preso, no le encarcelaron.
So she reported to the police this physical aggression that broke her face, However, nothing happened. The person, the aggressor, was not ever charged or arrested.
Y ya debido a que seguía mis denuncias en las redes, yo seguía apoyando, haciendo activismo. Vuelve la policía política a prepararme una cama. Yo venía y venía una moto, llegan dos patrulleros, me paran, me golpean, me vuelven a llevar a la unidad de la policía, me vuelven a trasladar a la sala de psiquiatría.
So so now she was released. She kept doing activism. The police arrested her again and took her back first to the police station and then to the psychiatrist facility.
Y nuevamente cuando me dicen o te vas de Cuba, me forzaron o te vas de Cuba, me levantaron una causa con eso.
So she was charged and they gave her a choice. You either leave Cuba or...
O iba a prisión con la causa que ellos me volvieron a levantar de atentado cuando yo me defendí del policía cuando me golpeó.
So they gave her two choices. She either leave Cuba or she would be charged for fake allegations.
Eso se lo dicen a mi padre. La decisión de salir de Cuba, mi papá me dijo, o sales, porque me lo hablaron claro, que no vas a salir más de la prisión.
So they told to talk to her father, and her father told her that the secret police instruct him that she either go outside of Cuba to exile or she will be in prison forever.
Para mí fue duro abandonar mi país. Para mí es duro estar aquí, porque yo nunca he querido salir de Cuba. Yo, bueno, que malo, en Cuba me gustaba estar, tenía mi familia, el amor de los cubanos, aunque uno sea...
So for her, was really tough. Like she didn't want to go into exile. Like she enjoyed being in Cuba. Like she loved her friends, her family. So it has been really tough to live.
Aunque, entonces, ella es lo que estaba diciendo, es que no salí de Cuba porque las personas a veces dicen, no, se fue de Cuba. No, yo no salí de Cuba porque quise, estoy aquí. Por obligación, y decidí seguir luchando y apoyando a mis hermanos que hoy están pasando lo mismo que yo pasé. Le hice un resumen.
So she's here against her will. Like she didn't want to leave, and now she is just raising her voice for those that are suffering the same sins, the same torture and unjust prison that she suffered while she was in Cuba.
Exacto. Ahora mismo el líder mío de mi organización, Paco, lleva 3 meses en paradero desconocido. La esposa iba hoy a ver si lo podía ver.
And she's mentioned referring to José Daniel Ferrer, the leader of UNPACU, that nobody knows his situation for like 3 months. His wife in Cuba has been going to the prison where they have him, but they don't know where he is or like, if he's alive. And well, now I'm not translating anymore. I want to thank you again for sharing your testimony. And it's really tough. This is something that maybe people in the audience online or here probably could reach out to us. There is an email that we have, presospolíticos@victimsofcommunism.org. If you guys want to support her, she doesn't have legal status in the United States. So it would be really helpful if, lawyers that want to do this pro bono want to get in touch with us, and we will put those lawyers in touch with her to paperwork, no English, like recently arrived after all this traumatic experience. So we would really appreciate whoever can reach out and help us to support her. With that, right. So with that, thank you again. I'm going to invite Javier to come back and now present us a website that we are launching today to have more information disaggregated by gender, by age of the Cuban political prisoners. Please, Javier.
Okay, what we have done is in the Prisoners Defenders site here, we have put a news section which is online right now. It is already launched, although it is being charged, it's being fulfilled with data, and it is in a pre-launching state, let's say. This here, you can find all political prisoners, the evolution, and every month we will have all the numbers updated. But of course, we can look for example, Ferrer, just like that. And we'll find all the Ferrers here, like Jose Daniel Ferrer, and so on. Okay, you have the data here. There is data, and in this case, we have uploaded one paper. We have many things being uploaded these days, pictures of the detainees and so on. And as you can see, we have an advanced search box in which you can choose minors, for example, men, minors. You can choose from provinces. All the minors are in these provinces, so you can choose whatever the province. The years of condemnation, these are minors, and the condemnation years go from 3 to 8 years, the minors. The offenses, the so-called offenses, which are, of course, fabricated. Sedition, minors are usually charged on sedition. It is incredible, but it is happening there are more than 200 cases of sedition just by demonstrating on the 11th July 2021. 210 people condemned for sedition. People who didn't know each other, or they don't know any of them, but they're charged on sedition. And you can search on this, and you find the 31 prisoners, minors, who are imprisoned. Okay, and they were imprisoned when they were minors. They are growing up in jail. 2 years later, of course, they are 18, 19, and so on. Okay. I don't know. Let's see some cases that we have uploaded information, complete information, because it will be interesting to see these cases. I have, for example, here, I have a couple of names. We are fulfilling Luis Frometa Comte. I can put here Frometa, and it would be probably the only one. Oh, there are many Frometas. Luis Frometa Comte. He lived in Germany. He went to visit Cuba, and he was there. I mean, he lived in Germany for, I don't know, 30 years or something like that. I mean, he was almost completely German, but he has a son in Cuba, or a little son, something like that. So he was visiting Cuba. And then there was this demonstration. So he went on the street. Now he's charged 15 years of prison because of demonstrating. He cannot go to Germany anymore. But the German government is doing something? Nothing. Nothing. Because it is also Cuban. And the Cuban authorities do not respect his German. So the German authorities who are talking to Cuba with the dialogue agreement and so on, they are not forcing the Cuban governments to respect their citizen. So he is among bars for 15 years. His life is destroyed, of course. Imagine. And all the loved ones are in Germany. It's incredible. And he has this, the opening of his oral case, the attorney indictment, the sentence, everything is here. We are charging with pictures and we are charging with the documents, okay, this sentence and so on. I don't know how to manage very well the back on this. How do I go back? Let me see. No. How do I go back in Apple? Because I'm not a user of Apple and I want to go back. How do I go back? How do I go to the Safari? Because it's it opened it in Safari. I have to go back. I don't know how to go back. History? Okay.
No.
No. Okay. History probably. No. History back. Okay. The button. I don't know why the button is not there. So you have this case. Let me show you some other more. For example, Maria Cristina Garrido, the two sisters I was talking about, Maria Cristina Garrido and Angelica Garrido. We can search for her here. We can search the two sisters, Garrido. And you will see Angelica and Maria Cristina, and you will see her picture already uploaded, her documents. So we are putting this tool online for everybody to search for cases and have all complete information. This is an initiative that, I mean, is very interactive. The different, I mean, for example, if you want to search for the ones who were incarcerated in 2021, you would do something like this, and you would go here back to search. And you had those 785 prisoners, which some of them are, for example, convicted, condemned, and other political prisoners. So convicted, people who are in prison and are convicted of conscience, only by means of fundamental rights. Okay, so you have this 632 people convicted from those dates. You have the prisons. I mean, you can search by prison. You can search by many things. You can erase all these filters, or one or all of them, and start all over. You have 1,032 prisoners. So, I mean, it's a tool, a very important tool for the exile and human rights organizations to study what is happening with political prisoners. Well, for example, I can tell you that very easily by Ferrer, because he has my age. We have only 3 days of difference in where we were born. So Jose, 52, that is the age, today's age. Yeah, he's 52, like me. Yeah, he was born in the 29th of July. So of 70. So this is the tool. I think it's very useful. We are uploading pictures, photographs. We started 2 days ago to upload pictures, and we have from 200 prisoners and documents, and we have thousands of documents to upload. We're gonna do that in the next weeks, and people will have this tool to use because they were asking the Excel file list of political prisoners. It was static. It was not being used correctly, I have to say that. And it was causing problems because it has very personal data. So on the personal data, the very personal data is being taken off is being removed from this site. So we have it. And if somebody wants to know something else about a prisoner, we can inform of every one of them. We have contact with all the families of them.
Is the database about 32 or 200?
What is it?
Is the database about 32 prisoners or is it 200 or something?
No, it's 1,032 political prisoners, which are some are like 800 or so. I can tell you right away that is the tool for the MISI type of convicted of conscience are 387. Okay, if you 787. Sorry, it looks like I'm dyslexic also in English, not only in Spanish. Okay, so you have condemned of conscience, which are prisoners of conscience that have been condemned, but are now like having forced labor, but sleeping at home and things like that, or incarcerated at home, things like that. So 215 and about 30 prisoners are other cases, which include even people from the regime, retaliated by the regime, or people who enter Cuba to fight for freedom, things like that, which are very hard to consider prisoners of conscience, but are political prisoners and are in our list, okay? So, and those are about 30, yeah, the number I remember. So, well, this tool is online. It will be growing in depth and it will be updated every month. And all the prisoners are gonna be there. It changed the whole way our organization is working with political prisoners. Okay, thank you very much. It was. I wanted to show you that. Okay. Yeah. You have a question? Huh? Okay.
Everybody speaks Spanish?
Not everybody.
Okay. Well, I'll speak English. How can someone participate in your campaigns or help defend Cuba or help your organization?
How can they help us or?
¿Cómo podemos ayudar a los presos de la isla? ¿Cómo podemos participar en sus campañas? ¿Y cómo podemos ayudar a su organización?
Okay. We have judicial papers from hundreds of them. I would say more than 800 of them have some kind of papers, okay? But we don't have them all. And we have already presented 600 cases to the United Nations in individual complaints. Huh? Yeah. To the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention and the torture, the Committee Against Torture, the Committee of the Child, because torture, child, and arbitrary detention are subject to monetarize, let's say, Cuba. So we have, and also in the special procedures. So we have kind of started the defense of those 600. But if we had papers from 100 more or 200 more, it would be very important because the due process violations in Cuba are the detention. First of all, the attorney is the one who detains the person and puts him in prison without the participation of any judge, which is a complete barbarism in international law. And that is a due process violation complete. So if we have the precautionary measure of the regime in paper, then we have it all demonstrated. That is an arbitrary detention. So it's very important to have the papers, to have the sentence, to have everything, because we can demonstrate their cases. So we defend as much prisoners, as much papers we get. So it is important, critical, to tell the families, please send us the papers of your cases. And it is an advantage because if one family sends us one paper, one case that has 10 people, we have already the case of 10 people. So, and we can defend 10 people more. So it's very important that. The other issue is to have the contact with their families. Very important. We have, from those 1,032, we have contact with 950 of their families or so, 900, 950, but we still have like 100 families that we have not reached. And we have documented because others gave us the papers. So we have the papers, we know they're in prison, we know their case completely, but we haven't got in touch with the families because the families are so afraid that they don't want to contact anyone. It is important to differentiate between the organizations who want to make let's say, a campaign on the political prisoners or raise the voice or something, and the organizations that can do that, but also can do a silent defense of the political prisoners, which is something we do in most cases. So we have to instruct the families not to be so afraid to give the papers, to have contact with organizations, because sometimes they feel like, well, if I contact prisoners offenders, they will use my case to win money out of it. They will do a campaign, because the regime has told them that we are mercenaries paid by the imperialism to do shows of political prisoners to win money. That's how their mentality is grown through the years. So it is important that. And on the other side, it is very important to support these organizations because we don't have support from Europe, for example. Only one country, the Czech Republic, has bet on us and has given us funds to continue. But of course, the most solidary countries are the United States, the Northern Europe, Sweden, Norway, UK, Canada, but mostly the United States, and Cuba, mostly the United States. And we were very fortunate to have the Czech Republic to help us, but we don't have the resources we need. That's why people tell me that I don't sleep, because I work 14, 15, 16 hours every day without any vacation or weekend or whatever, because I'm devoted to this work. But we need funds. Yeah. And for example, people from the Cubans from the diaspora could help a lot. And sometimes they are fighting to receive more funds one than another instead of many times investing in organizations, diaspora, immigration, helping the wounded to be sent. Sometimes money goes on the island, but the ones who, like Kelly, for example, Kelly, she was very known. Her case was in all media, okay? Everybody said, oh, Kelly de la Mora. When Kelly leaves Cuba, because the situation, it's something human beings are not used to stand very well, and she leaves, then it's like, wow, she left. Now she doesn't even have a lawyer, a pro bono lawyer to help her with the asylum. So that's the situation. We need more solidarity from Europe, but also from everyone. Everyone has to think about what we are doing, no? Because we can change the world, but we have to focus very much on putting everything on the pan somehow, you know? So this is just a side I wanted to introduce you to and hope, yeah.
Tiene un programa que uno pone en su banco y todos los meses tenemos.
Okay, I have not done so because two things. Because of a lack of, I started this with my own money. I had hundreds of thousands in the bank, savings, my savings. And I said to my children, hey, I'm going to start helping Cuba for 1-2 years. I don't know, whatever the money does. And then I'll get another business, job, whatever, and I'll continue. But it came to a point in which I was being financed too by the Czech Republic and a pastor also that we all know and so on. So the thing is that I didn't think about it. I didn't think about financing this, but it's something I have to do. And so I am becoming, prisoners defenders is becoming common utility, common use, or common profit, or public utility, or I don't know how to say it in English. No, it is a non-profit already, but it is another level to be considered good for society. Yeah, that is the thing. In Europe, we call it utilidad pública, public servant, let's say, something like that. No, public useful at public, something like that.
So what's the difference between
The non-profit, like we have, if you help us, you don't deduct any taxes. You don't. But if you're utilidad pública, then the money they give you, they can deduct from their taxes. No, we are not. We are not, and that is something that would be important. That is something I'm thinking about, to instead of being only European, being mixed European and the United States. And it has a lot of sense, but it's like the methodology of prisoners defenders got us to have more than 230 complaints won the United Nations in the last 4 years and a half. That is something no organization has ever done. And it is because of the methodology. For example, this torture, 181 cases, how did we do it? Did we employ 50 people talking to families? No, it was a methodology. And if I explain it to you, it sounds very easy, but it is a methodology, something new that has never been done. So that methodology is something that has to be, I want it to be very well established, with more people than me knowing everything, because now I have 3 or 4 people that are having the level of knowledge I have on the organization. Once that we have that, then we can expand and somehow do the same in many other countries, like we are doing in Egypt, Turkey, Cuba. I want to grow in that sense, but I trying to grow in Mexico helped me realize that before growing, you have to establish very firm foundations, and then you start growing. So that's in the phase we are.
I didn't talk to you later, Javier, Bettina.
Yeah. I recognize it. Yeah. Very glad to see you here.
I can help you with that 501c3
In
nonprofit.
for the United States. Yeah. We need to find the crazy person who wants to run prisoners defenders in the United States, but okay. I don't know about that, but Bettina, okay, you know it is possible. Well, very important too. Very important. Well, I'm going to take the word of Bettina. If she's going to help us to do that, she's an expert on that. So if she wants to help us on that, that'll be fine. Yeah. And do you think it works? It would work? Yeah. Okay. I don't have the experience on getting money from. Huh?
No tienes que inventar nada. Mira lo que hacen, lo que hace todo el mundo.
Yeah, probably. I hope so. But for example, Amnesty International doesn't have any money for the Caribbean. That's why it has only one person, because they don't get enough money for that country. But if you talk about the United States, there's a lot of people paying for Amnesty International in the United States to get in trouble the authorities in the United States. No, I'm not criticizing. I'm saying that the difficulties they have to have money, to have funding for the Caribbean. Amnistia has a lot of difficulties to have funding. Sí, no, pero que cuando uno se plantea por pequeñas cantidades conseguir dinero, no sé si va a salir, pero tengo que explorarlo. Es algo que hay que explorar.
En la medida que hables de la representación.
Sí, pero que yo no he hecho ninguna crítica. Lo que digo es que a la pobre Amnistía en Caribe no tiene ni dinero para pagar a un empleado. Sí. Correcto. Ok. En aguas turbulentas. Ya. Sí. Ok. Thank you very much. Thank you.